Hey everybody, Quantum here, and in this video we're going to be testing out some more Set 5 of Disney's Lorcana Shimmering Skies. I am going to be using an updated version of Sapphire Steel, and my friend here is using Amber Sapphire, and as per the title of this video, you're going to see how insanely powerful Amber Sapphire can be now, especially when you get a very nice curve, which is not that hard to do in this deck considering how you curve out with the deck list, like 8 1-drops, 8 2-drops, etc. When you get a turn 1 Daisy Duck on field, I think a lot of decks are going to have to worry about this card because it can just snowball its way to an insane amounts of advantage. Here you can see my opponent develops the Daisy Duck and then the Anna, which right now does not quest for 2, but these are two different characters that each have 1/4 stat lines and will both potentially quest for 2. The Daisy Duck does, with the effect of reveal the top card of my deck. If it's a character, I put it into my hand. I ended up drawing without showing my opponent, so obviously you can see here I drew the Hiram, so this goes to my hand. Then when they play the Anna, they pass over to me, so I get to draw a card here. So I draw the Fortisphere. If it's not a character, it goes to the bottom of your deck. So Daisy Duck, while it does feed card advantage to your opponent potentially, it doesn't really matter, especially when you are just winning the game like by turn 5 or turn 6, right? And with the Sapphire cards, you actually are able to play stuff like the new Donald Duck, like in the thumbnail, because it not only will ramp you, but it will also quest for 2, and it's a decent body at a 3/4 stat line, so it can likely survive for a decent amount of time before it's outed, at least maybe like a quest or 2, and having to use a Zeus on it or something just feels really bad. So here you can see, traditional Sapphire Steel, I'm able to get a lot of these items on board, but if I don't see removal, I'm just gonna lose the race here. Even Babooms aren't gonna do it because that only deals 2 damage. That's not enough to take out the Daisy Duck or the Anna. I'm gonna need a combination of characters and actions, basically, or songs, in order to take things out. Here on turn 3, my opponent does drop the hero Mickey Mouse, which synergizes well with the Sapphire Amber deck here, because now that Mickey's on board, not only does it ramp the opponent, but it enables the Anna to be questing for 2, since Mickey Mouse is a hero, so it adds that extra lore to the Anna here. Now my friend was testing out this list. There's a few more things that he could optimize with it, but you can see, like, I just can't do anything, especially when aggro is on the play against Sapphire Steel. We're going to need to figure out a way to deal with stuff like this, because this Amber Sapphire deck might actually be a pretty good threat in the meta right now, made very much viable by the Daisy Duck. So right now I'm just debating like what is the best strategy. You can argue that inking this Mr. Smee was probably incorrect, but my goal was basically to try to ramp and slow the opponent down as quickly as possible. They're on 6, they're going to go to 11 next turn, plus develop another questing threat. I ink a whole new world because I don't want to wheel my opponent into more advantage right now, and I don't feel like I need to basically find anything with the wheel. But yeah, grab your swords here wouldn't do enough. The Tinkerbell coming down is what I'm thinking might be my best bet, but if the opponent just gets the perfect line here, like, there's nothing that I can really do. I don't know, maybe like double grab your swords, maybe running 4 grab your swords to combat aggro might be what Sapphire Steel needs to do. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see as we test some more and see what other people come up with as a way to combat some of these powerful aggro decks that are now going to be using Amber because of the Daisy Duck. But the Sapphire version, I'm a huge fan. I was a huge fan of this ink pairing in set 1. Was really sad to see it go away. Here you can see me just getting the extra cards from the Daisy Duck and whatnot, then drawing for turn. And these Hades, I think, are really good. You're going to see in the second match, we're actually able to stabilize against the aggro deck and do pretty well. But in this first match, we were just getting absolutely cooked. So I just double ink once for turn and once with Fishbone, drop the Tinkerbell, and deal 1 damage to everything on board. But at this point, like, because the opponent was able to ramp with the Mickey Mouse, right, they get the extra ink, so they're on 4 ink. Then for turn, they ink again, they're on 5 ink. Then they play Donald, they get the free ink again, they're on 6 ink, which means this next turn, they're on 7 ink, which means they could drop Surfer Stitch on turn 5. That's absolutely crazy. And my opponent here, to be fair, did get the absolute nuts, in my opinion. Like, they curved out so perfectly, and when something like this happens, like, you pretty much just lose the game. And he even told me when he did this, he's like, playing the Mufasa was probably the right play, but he's like, I didn't care. I wanted to play the Surfer Stitch just to show you, like, I had the line. And like, at this point, what are you going to do against a turn 5 4/8 body that draws the opponent 2 cards? like there's nothing I can do, right? Because yeah, he's on 11 already. He's going to quest, I think, almost like what, up to 18, because Donald quests for 2 as well. So let's see, 2, 4, 5, 7 plus 11 is 18. The Surfer Stitch in and of itself quests for 2, so I have to out the Surfer Stitch. The Daisy reveals a Baboom, and this is where Daisy could actually come in handy. Like if it reveals a good removal spell, like let's say you're up against Ruby and it reveals a Be Prepared, now you're not drawing that Be Prepared. You're actually putting it to the bottom of your deck. So my friend was telling me, he's like, yeah, I don't care about the card advantage because I'm just going to win the game before you can even do anything meaningful with all those extra characters that I give you most likely, right? So yeah, it's really interesting to see. Props to him for making this list. We have been talking a little bit back and forth about like what new decks might come up. So I'm really happy he was able to put something like this together and showcase it for us today. But yeah, you can see some of these new cards like the new Donald, the new Daisy, just absolutely putting in a shift and decimating me. So here you see me just kind of contemplating. I know the game is over because even though I get a Zeus, it's still not enough. I don't get a Zeus, sorry. I have Hades on 7 because I was also double ramping with the Fishbone. Could you imagine against a non-ramp deck? Like, you're going to be on 5 ink when your opponent's on 7 or 8, potentially, right? Depending on if you're on the draw or on the play. Like, and you're just not going to have answers. You're ramping with advantage with card draw, and these are all X and 4 bodies, right? Or X and 3 bodies. Like Donald is 3-4, I believe. Mickey's 1-3. The Anna and the Daisy are 1-4. I Hades away the Surfer Stitch, right? Because I have to out the ready threat, but I just can't out the opponent's board. But what I'm trying to say here is, like, you have card draw with Rapunzel because these are bodies you can throw into weaker threats if your opponent exerts stuff or challenges, like they have to dual challenge or something because they can't wipe things out in one turn anymore. So Rapunzel can come down, heal up those aggro threats so you can continue to quest with them. Rapunzel is also a hero, so it triggers with the Anna. You have Surfer Stitch to draw. You have tempo control with Mufasa if you build it that way. Like, this deck looks to be pretty threatening. To be fair, it does have to curve out in order to kind of get this line. And like I said, my opponent did get the kind of nuts. But here you can see I'm just basically like, yeah, you win the game, right? You're on 18. I couldn't out your whole board. I don't know if I really misplayed heavily there. You could argue maybe I should have hard casted Whole New World, but then my opponent just would have had a fresh 7 as well. And I couldn't deal with their board, so I don't really know what the correct solution or correct lines of play were there. If I just was losing that game no matter what when the opponent curves out like that. Here I can finally see there's my Chicha, there's my Zeus that I needed a lot earlier on, because ramping for a Zeus could also be an adequate play. Inking the Smee there might have been a mistake, but what am I going to do? Throw Smee, like over 2 turns, throw Smee into something? Like, it's just too slow. And then if they have the Rapunzel, they drop Rapunzel. And I think they did ink 2 or 3 Rapunzels they mentioned. So, like, I just was in a bad spot overall. So, yeah, we end up losing that game. On to game number 2. Alright, so now it's game number 2. We've already mulliganed. I think I mulliganed 6 because I really needed to find a 1-2-3 curve. Going first, let's see if I can fare any better. If the opponent doesn't have that really busted nuts line, we should be okay to stabilize quite early, since we can, on the play, hopefully ramp into the Tinkerbell, and the Tinkerbell really still does slow down aggro enough. Here you can see my opponent dropped their other 1-drop, not the Daisy, but the Basil. And this card is actually pretty decent in my opinion, because it's a 1-cost 2/1 character, similar to the value you get off of something like a Chernobog Followers. Obviously that gives you card draw, but you lose the character for it. The Basil allows you to provide support, which is traditionally a very bad ability, but on a 1-drop, it's actually not bad at all. Being able to quest with this thing and then just pass the strength over to something else, it really can help you out significant threats early on. And again, only being a 1-drop character, it's almost no consequence because you're going to be questing with it anyways. On turn 2, the opponent drops a Chica. That means that if they end up ramping more than once per turn, or really it's only the second ink that you ink a turn. Even if you ink a 3rd time per turn, you don't get the extra draw. But if you ink twice, on the second time you ink, you will get to draw a card with Chicha. So it's a pretty good card. I run 4 in this build as well. Unfortunately, I don't have one in my hand here. But on 3, we do see some ramp in the Mickey Mouse here. So I'm just asking my friend if there was a way to do it. And again, he's the veteran of tabletop, so he was showing me over here. Just click that button. There's a button to put the top card into the inkwell without seeing it. So that's nice there. I'm going to go ahead and quest with Smee, knowing full well that they're likely going to crash their Basil. But if my opponent is the aggro deck, I want them to be challenging. I don't want them to be questing. And if they do attempt to race me, since I have the tempo and I have the better questing power on board in the Smee, I will gladly just continue to quest. So here you can see the Ink Rapunzel, and they also have the Mickey ramp for 3. And because this is the second time that they've inked in a turn, the Chicha triggers for them to draw a card, and then they use their 1-drop Basil to out my 2-drop Smee, so pretty good value for them. We got 2 ink off of the, or sorry, 2 lore off of the Smee, and then we lost it. So again, you can argue that trading out the Smee there was bad for me. Fortunately, we draw yet another uninkable and another whole new world here. At least we already have the 4 ink thanks to the Mickey, so we're going to be able to drop the Hiram, banish the Fortisphere, and draw 2. Thankfully, we do see the Tinkerbell. I'm forced to ink a Donald Duck here since it's really my only inkable. I have 2, and I'm basically playing towards this Tinkerbell now. Despite me playing 4 Chichas myself, we all know it for the ability to draw the extra card whenever you ink more, like on the second time in a turn. But we both overlooked the fact that it had support, and my friend just mentioned it to me. He's like, oh, you know, Chica also has support. Chicha, sorry. I believe that's how you say her name. Correct me if I'm wrong, though, in the comments. And so we were both like, oh, what? I didn't even realize she had support. So that's kind of just an interesting bonus ability. And in order for Ravensburger to make support more relevant, I do think that they definitely want to put support as like a secondary ability on cards that already have decent effects. That would like Chicha, right? She has the ability to draw you the cards here. My opponent's drawn 2 off of it, both off the Mickey and the Donald. So they're getting great value here. You can see kind of the way that Sapphire is able to be played now. It's absolutely crazy that they just got another draw engine in Chicha, and in addition to Hiram and the Popsicle engines. It's absolutely crazy. So Sapphire is looking really strong right now, especially this aggro variant. But the steel version, as you can see here, is still going to be very, very powerful, because once we develop our board, we likely will check aggro if they can't run away with the game fast enough. So yeah, the Donald gets them the ramp. It is a 2-questing 3/4 body, I believe. So we do have to get it off the board, and it feels pretty good for the opponent, most likely, that we had to waste the Zeus on it so we can slow them down and prevent them from questing. But I do have these whole new worlds, and I'm fine with either inking them or playing them, because my opponent does have quite a few cards in hand thanks to drawing those extra cards off Chicha. Now, my opponent was playing a couple of spicy cards to test out. Like, he wanted to test out the Shift Basil because it's more card draw. It's a 3-quester at worst too. But we were discussing, and he was like, yeah, maybe playing something like Perdita might be better because you can bring back the Daisy or the Anna. Both of these are 1/4 bodies, pretty difficult to out. You know, Perdita might come back into the meta. What else were we talking about? We were talking about a few different things. Maybe I'll make a video on the deck list and stuff later. Let me know in the comment section below if you would be interested. But here they end up Hadesing my Tinkerbell, and I'm like, bro, come on, man. But at least the opponent isn't like running away with the game. They haven't developed that wide board. They're only on 2 lore. So we've stabilized quite nicely here. And for an aggro deck, you can see the opponent is on like 8 ink. What kind of aggro deck goes to this level of ink? They have removal options. They have draw options. Like, this looks pretty spicy for an aggro focused deck. Like, you can play a little bit more of a mid-range control game. You can play an aggro game depending on, you know, if you're on the play or on the draw. And these ramping decks can definitely regain tempo because they have the ability to ramp past the disadvantage that they have when they go second, which is being 1 turn behind on ink, and, you know, being 1 turn behind on developing their board state. So if they can continually claw back advantage with things like the Hades and continuing to ramp, and the card draw, right? The card draw in and of itself is just crazy. Now, this person, my friend here, was not on Hirams because obviously they're on an aggro build, but between the Rapunzels, the Surfer Stitches, the Chicha engines, you have a lot of card draw. Basil potentially, right? I mean, I know we're probably going to cut that from this list in the end, but it's just absolutely crazy. And, you know, you can see how much ink they have here. It's absolutely ridiculous. But can they convert it into some actual advantage? They're ramping quite a bit. If that Chicha would have stayed on board, they would have drawn a lot of extra cards. But this Tamatoa, when it drops, is representing a huge threat. And because I still play the Hiram engine in Sapphire Steel, which I think you still will, obviously, it's literally, I think, probably still the strongest draw engine in the game. It's very unlikely that the opponent is going to be able to continue to put pressure on me without me being able to answer them, right, with steel removal. Because on this build, I am on 4 Zeus, I am on a couple of Babooms, on Tinkerbells, obviously, and I can just continually develop a bunch of different threats, as you can see here, and basically just make it impossible for my opponent to keep up with things, because I can Hades away the Mufasas that they drop, the Surfer Stitches, the opposing Hades, etc. And my opponent was saying here, like, yeah, I should have just been playing smarter and maybe used their Hades to out my Tamatoa instead of my own Hades. But I was like, it doesn't really matter, right? Because my Hades would be questing for 2. It would just be too much pressure. Like, it's a rough spot for you if you can't get that early advantage. And that is the disadvantage of aggro. While it looked really, really strong in game 1, you can definitely see where it can potentially fall down. Anyways, here you can see us ink the whole new world off of the Fishbone Quill that we played there. And then we ink for turn. And on the 6 ink, we're going to drop the Tinkerbell to deal 1 damage. Again, just putting the opponent on, if you want a quest, we're going to just destroy your board. And Tinkerbell has been absolutely great for that still. 3 uninkables in hand, but the only one that really matters here right now is the Hades. As long as this Tamatoa lives, the Tamatoa Hiram engine is in full swing. So Tamatoa quest for 2 returns the Fortisphere to hand. And you know, this combination of stuff is just still very, very powerful in this set here. At this point, though, the opponent's on 2 cards. The Rapunzel, the Surfer Stitch coming down doesn't really represent too much of a threat. Here you can see they're on Caterpillar too. So yeah, my friend was just trying out a couple of random things here, just another huge aggro threat. But we have discussed, you know, just synergizing the deck a little bit better with maybe more utility-based characters instead of focusing on just straight aggro, because it seems, I just saw from the first game, they can afford, you know, to play a few less aggro-oriented threats when they have stuff like the Daisy, the Anna, you know, other 2 or 3 questers that they can develop a little bit later on that can really help them close out the game. And honestly, you know, if you're aggressively ramping with now Donald and Mickey, even if you don't play Fishbone, the big Grammatala, because you're able to ramp to 7 so fast and drop Surfer Stitch or Grammatala on turn 5 instead of turn 7, like those might be viable. Like she might be another viable option despite her not seeing any meta relevance or play in the past couple of sets, right? So it'll be interesting to see how things go. But here my opponent quests up to 10. But yeah, they can't deal with my board. I'm on 9. We draw a Hades, or a Zeus here, sorry. So we're looking in really good shape. I had to go do something real quick, I think, so I'm just a little bit delayed on finishing off this turn here. But it's pretty obvious that I should be able to close this out. I have, what, 11 ink? 10 ink, sorry. So we're going to start off with turn 1 Fortisphere, place Fortisphere for 1. We draw into a Tinkerbell, and now I have a little bit of things to think about here. We end up inking with Fishbone the Mickey, and do I want to potentially shift this Tinkerbell to deal another 1 damage to the whole board and then use the Tinkerbell to crash into something, deal 2 damage? Or, okay, I opt to play Hades for 7 there, because, and then, you know, I total of 8 ink tapped down right now because I used 1 for Fortisphere. And then I quest with Hiram and draw 2. So I technically should have done that first. I forgot to do that. You should always quest with your Hiram and see what your draws are first. We ink for turn the Cogsworth, and then I still have the ability to hardcast this Zeus and then use Tinkerbell to crash and take out a threat. So what's the most threatening to me right now? The opponent's only on 10. I probably take out the Donald here because it quests for 2. Yep, so I'm pointing to the Donald. Take 3 damage, deal 2 damage to the Mickey with only 1 damage on it. In hindsight, because I know the opponent's on Amber, I probably should have taken out the Mickey that had the 2 damage, because the one that has the 1 damage, it doesn't matter, right? Like, I'm going to take it out with anything anyways. By taking out the one with the 1 damage and leaving the one with 2 damage on board, it represents a potential draw 2 if they have a Rapunzel, or if they top deck Rapunzel. But we do hard cast Zeus on the Hades to out it, so the opponent's just left on a small Mickey and a Caterpillar. We get back the Fortisphere that we just banished with the Hiram to draw 2 with the Tamatoa thanks to it questing. And then the Mickey's going to quest, go to 13, and Hades will quest, go to 15. And now the opponent really can't do anything. They're in top deck mode. They have no cards in hand. They have a very minimal board. We just quest for a game next turn. What's funny is what I just said actually comes to pass. Oh no, they draw Robin Hood, which draws them 1, and then I think they draw Rapunzel here off the Robin Hood. Yeah, and then they end up, so exactly what I said happened. They draw 2 off of the Mickey, and then they continue, so they end up drawing an Anna here, and this is 10 lower on board, but they can just pass turn if I didn't have game next turn. But I would likely have a way to deal with their board, right? Songs or Hades or some form of removal in order to take things out. But yeah, they just pass over to me, and then that's a GG. Once the board goes wide for us, there's not really much they can do. So I just show my opponent what I was on here. I had the Zeus, the second Tinkerbell, so we were feeling pretty comfortable in stabilizing even further if we had to. But obviously we would just quest for game, and that is a 2-game series between Amber and Sapphire.